and welcome to Film Independent Presents Virtual Edition. I'm Rachel Bleemer, Director of Events for Film Independent. Before we get started with today's very exciting Q&A, I have to give a special thanks to the Hollywood Foreign Press Association and Vision Media. Today we have a very different kind of Q&A, and without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator for today, Variety's own Jazz Tangcay. Jazz.
Thank you so much, Rachel, and thank you to Film Independent. I'm so excited to be here today for this incredible conversation and this incredible panel of women. So without further ado, let me introduce writer and director of Yes, God, Yes, Karen Maine, and actress Natalia Dyer, and writer and director of Miss Juneteenth, Channing Godfrey Peoples, and actress Nicole Beharie. Hi, and welcome.
Hi, Jazz.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, what an incredible lineup. So let's just begin. I mean, Channing, I'll start with you. For Miss Juneteenth, like, what was your relationship with that contest, and how was Miss Juneteenth born as a script?
I mean, it's interesting because I think that's a longer story than we have time. It was, the film is such a personal film. And, I've said before, and I'll say it here, that I feel like I've been making the film my entire life because I literally grew up going to the Miss Juneteenth pageant annually. And it was something that was formative for me because I think while most people were, growing up watching Miss America on television, I had a real tangible example of young Black women in a pageant. And, most folks call them beauty pageants. Miss Juneteenth is a little bit different. It's a scholastic beauty pageant. So, it's something that I think stayed with me. And when I was in film school and thinking of ideas about just what a first feature could be, it's one of the ideas that was most present. And I knew that I wanted to shoot the film in the community in which I grew up. And I also knew that I wanted to have this in the lead, a complex role, chronicling a Black woman's journey. And, I won't take up too much time here, but I could talk a little bit more about that later, because that was also really personal because it was based on women in my life.
Love that. And Karen, what about for you, the script and the journey of Yes, God, Yes? Because it's the stereotypes of dealing with religion. Talk about that in your journey.
I was raised in Iowa in a very Catholic household and community, and went to Catholic school for 12 years, which is kindergarten through high school. So strictly Catholic school. And it felt like I existed in that world only. And it wasn't until I sort of left Iowa that I understood there were other types of religions even, let alone other types of people. So it was a very sheltered, kind of confined environment. And when I left and went to New York for college, I realized those things and how my upbringing and my story was sort of unique in that way. And then I was sort of also disenfranchised by coming of age films that featured female protagonists. And as far as the sexuality was concerned, it tended to focus on partnered sex and losing their virginity. And I was like, there are all these male films where we get these fun masturbation moments, because it's usually funny and awkward. And I didn't feel like I was really seeing that in the sort of female coming of age stories that featured a female lead. So I thought, what if we threw those two things together, which make for an interesting dynamic conflict, I think. But yeah, a lot of it was based on just growing up in Iowa and not really understanding how the world works in that moment where things sort of start to shift and you start to get a broader understanding of the world. And I think we just hit the tip of the iceberg at the end of the film. I think, there's so much further for the character to go, but, you only have so much time.
I love the casting in both of the movies. I mean, Nicole, Natalia, and those characters, Alice and Turquoise, are just like some of the best characters that we've seen on screen this whole year. They're they're complex, they're dynamic, and just so, you know, incredible roles. I mean, what was it like, Nicole, when you're reading, you know, Channing's script and you're seeing turquoise on page? Like, what was it like? I have to be a part of this. What was your yes moment?
I had to beg her. No, it was honestly, I don't know how Channing, I'm not really sure how she got so many layers and themes into the film. It's done with such like simplicity. But as I was reading it, I was like, oh, that's happening. The prison industrial system, you know, Black exceptionalism, social climbing, hierarchy, poverty, you know, Juneteenth, slavery, emancipation. It's like, how is all this happening? But it's like not happening. It's also just about this woman accepting her daughter, or you know, trying to protect her daughter in an environment and wanting to see her go somewhere else. And I just thought, I'm not really sure how I'm gonna do this, but I'd like a shot at it. And then after speaking with Channing, she had a very specific vision, and I started to realize I've lived in Georgia actually, and like South Carolina, so I felt like, oh, I kind of know the South. But she was like, these are really specific people. This is my community. And the more that I read it and met some of the people and started like working on the dialect and things, I realized, yeah, this is like so specific, but then it's like so universal. There's so many themes. So I think that's what it was for me. Just like, how do you mix all of that up, and that becomes like your experience, and that kind of is the experience of being an American right now, right? Like it's so complex, so many layers. Yeah, and she does it with a deft hand, and it's so simple. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Channing, talk about, let's just add to that. Like, how did you develop, like, you know, you basically put all those layers and themes into this great script, and you're also developing the incredible character of Turquoise. Like, how did you, you know, come to develop Turquoise on page and deal with all of that?
Yeah, I mean, so that's interesting. It took a long time. I can start with that. But I mentioned earlier that you know, I pretty much, you know, I write from inside out. I'm a, you know, an artist, I think, that's inspired by environment. And I mentioned earlier that Turquoise is based on the women in my life, and it's just like women in the community, my family, myself, but most especially my mom. I think one of the things that I saw in common in the women in my life was that they had a grit and a sense of determination, but they also always carried themselves with grace. And I could just remember, you know, seeing my mom, you know, who was single for much of my life, you know, and had her own, you know, love for the arts. Like I would see her try to navigate her own dreams while, you know, raising children. And I just knew that that was the kind of story that I wanted to tell. And I think initially, you know, when I wrote the script, I had written it as someone who had watched her. And then eventually, like shortly before, I think right after we got the green light that we were going to be able to make the film, I found out that I was pregnant, of course. So I became a mom myself, and saw the film even differently after that. You know, I saw this bond. There was always a bond between the mother and the daughter on the page, but I saw the intimacy as that bond in real time. You know, I saw that I needed to find a way to bring the joy to this project. And you know, like in our collaboration, I think I had a tougher version of Turquoise on paper, you know, but I can remember, you know, hopping in with Nicole and saying, you know, no matter what we, you know, have to do, we've got to find the joy between them, you know. And she's someone who can obviously bring that sense of nuance and, you know, that specificity to each role she takes on. So she was able to do that. But I'm greatly influenced by the environment. I'm greatly influenced by the community that I grew up in. You know, I could talk about that forever, but I'm really from this close knit Black community in Texas. And I think it influences my style as a writer director as well. Like there's this sense of authenticity in the community. And so I strive to bring that sense of authenticity to every single aspect of the project, just the writing, the directing. I love tiny human moments. I believe in very naturalistic acting and I tend to cast that way. So there's just a lot that went to it. And I'm gonna stop now because this is a question that I could go on all day about.
Well, no, I mean, I love that you talk about your process, and Karen, like, Channing just said she writes from the inside out. Like, how did you develop Alice, and then Natalia? What was it like when you saw the script and you're seeing this incredible teen, this coming of age story from a female perspective? Because as Karen said, so many times it's a male. I'm not saying men can't direct or shouldn't write these stories, but it was so refreshing to have, a female tell this story.
Yeah, I mean, Channing, when you were talking, I was just like nodding like incessantly. But yeah, like the tiny moments. By the way, like, and this may be me being ignorant to how things in Texas are, but like salt, who puts salt in the beer? Because that sounds delicious. Yeah, when I saw that moment, I was like, what? I'm gonna do that. I love that part. I mean, I love the whole thing, but that tiny detail, it was great.
Thank you. That was lifted from life.
Is that like a common thing, or is that just specific to people you know?
It's what I saw in the bar. It was funny because Nicole and I ended up having a similar experience. I'm sorry, I have a house phone ringing. I'm so sorry. I don't.
Hey, it's okay.
Who has a landline anymore? Look, I'm gonna mute myself, Karen. I'll come back.
Cool.
Channing has a house phone. We now know.
But yeah, I was like, I'm definitely putting salt in my beers from now on, because I'm obsessed with salt. But yeah, I mean, I was nodding a lot when she was talking because I think we have very similar approaches directing wise, and I think because both of these films were so personal to us, that just focusing on like letting what we remember and the experience and the naturalness of that come across on screen. And I'm not sure what your process was working with Nicole, but with Natalia, I was just incredibly open and just told her so much like personal backstory about my life, probably more than she wanted to know. But it was just the only way I could think to like really convey like these moments to her. And yeah, like I think the way to make it, as far as I'm concerned, to make these films about women that tend to be new or fresh, things we haven't seen but have always been like long held truths for actual women, is to show them as naturalistically as we can, I think. So like not covered in pink or glittery or just like raw and honest, so that people are like, oh, this is actually how women are, and that's cool. They're complex and they're horny and they're struggling, and that's, I think, really interesting. And I'll stop there and let Natalia talk.
If I could just jump in really quick, I absolutely adore that, because like that was such a, even in, talking to Nicole about what, turquoise looked like where she is, in this place in her life, it was really informed by the community. There is a utility in which women carry themselves, as well. They just get it done. They just get stuff done. And so it's just getting up, and turquoise, throws a scarf on her head and goes down to the bar, and you still see this she's still stunning. You still see this beauty in her, but her life right now is she's on purpose in that she wants to create this better life for her daughter. So all of those factors even informed everything, from the way turquoise looked, the way turquoise walks, the way and it informed all my creative collaborators as well. One of the things that I remember saying to them was, my producer and creative partner, when I took him to the community for the first time, this particular community has been, it was once this bustling Black enclave of Black business and Black commerce, but it's now being gentrified. And he said to me, he said, it almost feels like it's past its expiration date. And I said, absolutely, that's the best way to define it. There's this timelessness, the businesses that remain are legacy businesses that are being passed down through generations. People are purposely holding on to them. And so that's the way I talk to my creative collaborators, my cinematographer, costume designer, production design. Everything needs to look like it's slightly past its expiration date. It informed everything.
Yeah. Natalia, talk about like seeing Alice on the page, and Karen said she had told you her whole life story and given you all that information too.
Yeah.
So how did that help?
Well, I originally got, because she sent me the short, the script for the short first. We did that first, that there's always the longer concept for the feature length. But I think it was immediately for me, like it was a time, I mean, it still kind of is, just like a time where you're reading. I mean, I read kind of young. So, a lot of the scripts and characters and roles and concepts that you're kind of reading or, coming across or seeing are pretty predictable in a lot of ways. And I don't think that women have been written enough in that way, that honest, beautiful, natural way. And I think for me reading it was just like, wow, this feels kind of radical to me, like to address these topics, so just honestly and plainly, and just here it is, and to put it that way. And also it's funny, but not like huge slapstick funny. So from the beginning, I was really into Karen's voice, but I was just really into this kind of, I mean, at the time, kind of nerve-wracking concept, but just really game to be a part of it. And yeah, I think that the concept, the naturalism of the writing, of the directing and the acting, for me, and also in Miss Juneteenth, which I thought was phenomenal. It's so lovely for an actor, I think, to get to live in that space, and get to, experience that closeness to life and to what of a woman, and to have somebody saying that's okay, like that's what we're showing, I think is really, it was really, profound for me. I don't know, I really enjoyed that view as an actor.
Yeah. And Karen, just to jump off what Channing said about the creative collaboration, like, she collaborated with the costume and the production designer, all of that. Like, talk about your collaboration with your crafts team, and talking about how Alice would look, the cinematography and the pacing.
Yeah. Gosh, I think it was just, in terms of like costume and art, I feel like it was just a trip down memory lane to like try to, express my own upbringing and what that looked like, and finding the words to describe it, but also, going through old photos and yearbooks and things like that. And yeah, I remember like one day on set, in between like setting up shots, where it was like a moment of downtime, and I looked around, and they go on the retreat in that film, which for me was now as an adult woman, a very traumatic experience. And I looked around and I was like, I'm back. And I just like had like a subtle like freak out, like a panic attack. And I was like, good job team. Like, we've done it. It's put me back in it. It's amazing. So yeah, it's funny. Like, I really think, yeah, as like Channing was saying, like, it's the same process that you apply with the production crew team as you do to the cast and the actors. It's just, for me, and I think it sounds like for you as well, was to just be like completely honest, like share as much as you can. They'll take bits from it, they'll apply their own kind of twist on it, which is what they're there to do. And yeah, just making it feel like that's what I just love about filmmaking, is this big cohesive thing that you work on with just like a giant team, and everyone puts a part of it into themselves. And I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. I know I'm not throwing Channing under the bus because I just watched her film and she doesn't do it. But the whole film buy has always kind of struck me as a little off tone, just because I feel like so many people contribute to a film and making it the way it is, that unless you're literally doing all these like roles yourself, I think we should be a little more careful with that. Just because I think so many people put so much into their role. It really is a collaborative effort.
Yeah, I love that. I Nicole, one scene I cannot get out of my head, and it's just such a striking image, is when Turquoise is on the porch with the smoking with the tiara and wearing those boots. Like, talk about filming that scene and it that day. Like, what do you remember? What do you remember about that day? Or like, maybe Channing remembers, but like shooting that sequence. Oh, you're on mute.
I'm still bad at this. I don't know how I can still be bad at this. We've been doing this all year. Oh my God, Channing, help me. I don't know. Was that really, I mean, it wasn't really like a scene, right? Like we had finished for the night and then at the very end, she had this moment of contemplation. I think they just rolled on it. I don't know. I don't really know how to explain that scene. You gotta do it.
I think that's how it feels for you because you were so present.
Yeah, I was in it. I don't know.
Like, so in it, and just and I still am just in awe of her being present because there weren't a lot of takes of that scene, but there was, and I can't even remember, but there was definitely more than one. So, we were figuring out the timing of that Zoom, but that scene is my absolute favorite scene in the script. It is, and now y'all are hearing my toddler in the background.
It is a life.
I'm sorry, y'all. This is pandemic press. Oh my God.
Exactly.
Look, Nicole is remembering how things were on set right now. But no, that scene was always my favorite scene in the script. It was always Turquoise there on the porch with the crooked crown on her head. I kind of went back and forth on how I was going to interpret that scene visually. And then, Nicole is such a gifted actor, that she can just nail, every little specific moment, that it was like, okay, this very, very slow zoom to the end of this moment makes sense. But I even, I went to film school. Definitely a prep junkie. I prepped everything. Like I had visuals for everything. And I even storyboarded that scene, long before we did it. This is stuff I would never show you, Nicole.
I will say about that moment though, that, and it's something that I think both films have in common that we've spoke about, is like the details and the tiny human moments. I really enjoyed, in general, as a woman, and in other things I've been cast in, I'm sort of like the wife or the sidekick or like a plot device, So being able to sort of sit and linger in her reality and just the sheer act of thinking is kind of what acting is, you know what I mean? So it's like, oh, we get to think. Like, Natalia, I know it's great to get to think, you know what I mean? Like, I saw you thinking like about everything too. And I was just like, wow, how lovely it is that we can like breathe and not have to sort of hit the mark and get to a certain position for the guy, or like whomever, and like, make some huge thing happen. It was nice to have that sort of simplicity in moments where like the internal life could be something that the audience could see, just for like everyone to experience. And then there was so much pressure on the girls in both of these. I know this is not your question, but something I also
I love it.
Are like joint movie watching situation. So I was like, there's a really interesting, I don't know what Vertical's got going on here, but the religious theme, right? The motherlessness theme, like both of the characters had, like Turquoise had a mother. Your mother wasn't really present, right? your character's mother wasn't really present, but they were both like, it wasn't a thing. And then like the way that religion was playing into how we wanted to be in society and like what the expectations were. So interesting that the films have some parallel themes. I thought that was really interesting. I guess, and is that just a part of being American, being a woman, being a woman, being a woman?
Mm.
You know, I don't know. So yeah.
Natalia, you were going to add to what Nicole
Oh, I was just
said.
going to say, it just reminded me of that scene, what she was talking about, the thinking part. And there's that scene where Turquoise is on the bed and her husband comes in and says he doesn't have the money. And you just watch her and, you know, she doesn't say anything, but it was the most beautiful way to interpret that. Because you could just, I mean, as a woman, but I think anybody, you could just know what's going on in her head, and you don't have to say anything at all. But it just, you know, gave you everything. So I thought that was really beautiful. It really got me.
What was it like for you too with that script and those thinking moments that you had to do? Which, as Nicole said, you know, it wasn't about hitting the marks. It was just like you could be with the character and her thoughts, like especially with Alice.
I would say, I mean, I would say it's kind of a gift. I mean, I think it's a little intimidating sometimes because you kind of, you know, it's nice to have a character who says a lot of things so that you are informed, but then they're informed. But I think it's really such a gift when you're like, oh no, I can just live in this, and like I can trust Karen to say like, is that I'm thinking, I'm like, I get to kind of play in my world, but you know, tell me if it's reading. But yeah, it's really nice. It is one of the most fun parts I think about it, is getting to kind of lose your own head in that character. So I mean, I really enjoy it, but it is like a trust thing, I think, between actor and director to be like, how is this conveying? You know, this is what I can kind of twist it in different directions, but it's very nuanced.
And for both of you, you know, you've both done work in, you know, on TV series. What was it like? Or what was the difference for you on working with a TV series versus working, you know, on an independent film and having X amount of days to shoot, and actually knowing where your character was going from the very beginning?
Yeah, I mean it's a completely different world. Yeah, it's, and you know, it's a bit like apples and oranges. I think both of them can be fun and offer something, and you can kind of grow from both of them. But I always love how, you know, like a lot of indie films, and they feel very intimate. You know, and everyone's kind of there for this purpose. Smaller. Yeah, I think you just get a little bit closer, a little closer to what you're doing. You know, even if it's not in sequence, it definitely, in my experience in TV, it takes a long time. It takes a long time, and it can be very PC. Takes a long time, but you don't get much time to like try and fail or explore too much, because it's, you know, it's a big go. I mean, I enjoy both, but they're, yeah, very different.
What about for you, Nicole?
Heavenly Father. Okay, here we go. All right. Okay. I think the difference in like this particular thing is that you're working with someone who actually knows the world better than you do, right? It was so intimate, and like Channing says, she works from the inside out. So I was literally stepping into their world. Like a lot of the actors and the people that are in the bar and like in the church scenes and like all of those things are locals. So, you know, normally when we're on a TV set, there's a different director every few episodes, and it's just, it doesn't have the same specificity and intimacy, or you own the character way more because you've been living with it more than the people that are sort of coming in and out. So this was a lot more, I would say, maybe like vulnerable and sort of, you know, more exploratory, like, okay, well, what do I have to do to sort of fit in with all these people? Because yeah, this is a particular community, it's a particular sound, particular tempo, all that kind of stuff. And when you're on a show, you've already established that, you know, or at least within the first few episodes, you have to have a strong sense of that, and then you kind of live with it. And then yeah, like Natalia was saying, pace and not a great deal of time. Although we moved pretty quickly, I think we moved pretty quickly. But there was time to sort of at least prepare and on the top half, think about it and spend time with locals and all that good stuff. So I think that's the only difference for me.
How many days did you guys shoot?
I don't remember, Channing. Again.
Our principal was 22 days, and then we later had a couple of pickup days, so we had no time.
Yeah, I was trying to be nice when I was like, yeah, we moved kind of fast too. It was like, no, we were moving like it was a TV show. Definitely.
That's very generous.
What about you,
We
Karen?
had 16 days.
What?
Oh my gosh.
We had one pickup day as well, but yeah,
Oh my goodness.
we were moving.
Now I feel extravagant.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Oh my goodness. Congratulations to you.
Oh, next level.
Yeah.
Here's me thinking 25? No, 60. 16 and 22. Wow.
I mean, 22 is a little short as well. There's never enough time.
No,
No matter
never.
what, I think.
Never.
It's just part of the job.
I'm thinking back. I mean, we were talking earlier that we've all been here for what, 9 months, 10 months now. And, Miss Juneteenth came out at Sundance. Yes, God, yes. Premiered out of South by Southwest. The films were released in a pandemic and, pivoted to a virtual release. What was that like for you as filmmakers, to have the film come out in a pandemic and go, straight, the non-traditional theatrical route instead?
I mean, I don't really have anything to compare it to, this being my first feature. I think in a lot of ways it was probably helpful for indie films because all these big studio tentpole films were getting pushed. So I think it created more space for just coverage and reviews and eyeballs looking at these films that maybe you don't always get on them because, I was going to say The Matrix 3 is out. I don't know where I pulled that from. No one's doing The Matrix right now. I don't know. Yeah, a Marvel film may have been a better reference. But yeah, because something else is out. So I think in that sense, it was great. A theatrical release would have been amazing. But I feel positive enough that maybe I don't. I hope cinemas continue to exist, especially for independent films and independent cinemas. And I'm hopeful that there'll be more films from both myself and Channing that will have the opportunity to be played in the cinema in the future.
Yeah, I'm the same as Karen. Like, this is a debut feature film, and I think I did have to adjust my expectations because my mandate was that we wanted it in the theater, because it's such a community-based film. I wanted the community to have access to it, and selfishly, I wanted to be able to sit in the back of the theater every now and then and see people experience it, and Karen, because I assume, Karen, you were in South by Southwest this past year, so you lost your premiere.
No, it was 2019, so
You did premiere there. Okay. Well, we premiered in Sundance, so we were the, last festival pretty much that got to screen. So I felt fortunate that we at least had that experience, and we were to play South by next. And then of course everything happened with South by. So, I mean, there was some disappointment that came with it, but there also, it did, as Karen is saying, create an opportunity for these films to be seen. It wasn't just the pandemic for us, we were, coming out around the time of George Floyd and, the conversations around Breonna Taylor, and all of these unjust killings of Black people, so we were getting the film out into the world in which, as Black people, we were navigating, what our own sense of survival was. So it was just a super emotional time. And there are themes in the film that, were mimicking the conversations that were happening right now. I mean, the interesting thing was when Miss Juneteenth first came out, and even when we were pitching the film, I mean, the film, it took me I had the idea for this film probably a decade ago, but it took me 7 years in which to get the film made, to push it up the hill and get it done. And when we released, it was interesting because now all of a sudden, people had no idea what Juneteenth was, and then all of a sudden it was in the zeitgeist, you know. So people came to the film that way, and it's interesting because in the way that people release film in the theater and people they want you to go to the theater the first weekend, I feel like people are still discovering our film, um, and so it's been interesting, and I'm looking forward to talking to other veteran filmmakers just about their process of releasing their first feature film, so I have something to compare it to or either to look forward to in the future.
Well, I love that, this is your first, both of you, your first directorial debut feature. I'm looking forward to your projects and, Nicole, Natalia, such powerful performances, incredible and
Mhm.
so memorable. Congratulations to you all. And thank you to Film Independent. And thank you for that conversation.